Garage. Alrighty, so basically you've got a little bit of an armor advantage, which is good. So you can play through this side pretty easily. They've got a relatively small artillery. If you wanted, you could actually strong arm through there. But usually when you have like an armor advantage, I'd prefer to exploit that armor advantage than to go the other way. Apparently you decided not to. And then again, you always want to look and see what your team is doing. Your armor is going this way, which is fine. And you just want to keep an eye on what they do and make sure that they don't melt too fast. And similarly, you want to be reasonably aggressive over here because there's no reason to have an E5 on this side if you're just gonna camp. Well, see how this Roomba is going right here right now? That's not really helpful. He's probably just gonna get wrecked. You see a lot of people take that area. I don't feel like it's a very good area at all, no matter what tank you're in. And then you can always push relatively aggressively in through here. And again, especially if artillery fires, you want to keep a track, a mental timer about what's there. And you can spot up through here by going into this bush right here. There's a good chance you should be able to fully. See how your team is already established on this 3 line? Their guys are in the back, so that's good. That means you have some time. You don't really need to super rush this. You just need to play it smart. You want to be careful about coming up on this side. It's pretty easy to the completely gratuitous auto aim there. You can still hit that guy if you want. Yeah, I don't like. It's not usually that good of an idea to come over on this side of the track. You don't really get better shots on anything. You just expose yourself more. Like you're better off just literally pushing forward here. Like you're a little bit far behind. Like you're a second line, top tier heavy in an E5, and it's not like the E5 is a crappy heavy. So like you need to be like this. There's no reason why this 1390 should be in front of you. And yeah, you can ignore the T-34. You're not really concerned about that. So this is a situation that I talk about a lot in terms of understand what it is that you really need to be afraid of here. Like if you're this 30B, or if you're this E5, or if you're this 5100, you know, you're not. This T-34 could potentially damage you because you're over enough that he gets shots into your lower glacis, and it's at a reduced angle, so he can pen you, right? The T-62 is not really going to have a good shot. There's almost no position that he can take over there where he's going to get a good shot on you. And this T-28 Proto is camping up under here. So really what you need to be afraid of is 2 things. 1, you need to be aware that this T-34 can shoot you, and 2, you need to be afraid of artillery. And so your positioning should always reflect that. Okay, what is it that I need to be afraid of right now? Even if you get shot once by the T-34, you know, big deal. He's gonna get toasted. That's not the problem. And it's the same thing if you're this 30B here. Like you're not worried about a lot of these guys shooting you. You're worried about that already hitting you if you're that guy. You'll hear whenever you play pubs or you listen to people talk about things, they always complain about arty, but then they do exactly this. They go out into the middle of places and they sit on top of hills and they just sit there. And it's like, well, what did you think was going to happen? So just something to think about. Again, that T-62 is not a threat, so you want to push in a little bit so that you're tucked in away from that arty, and there's nothing that this T-28 Proto can do. This is a situation that we talk about a lot in terms of just bullying. And you don't want to get too close because again, when you come out on this side of the bridge, you're potentially can get hit by RD as well. There's almost no advantage to come out on this side of the bridge over here. It's almost always better to go over there because the lanes of fire from if they start coming, like not where this T-28 Proto is at, but like if they had started coming back across this field, catching you coming across here is much more vulnerable than catching you coming across here. And it's a distance of just 10 meters. You know, you don't need to push that far. Similarly, you didn't need to push that far to get into the T-28 Proto to make yourself a target. Like, it's nice that you did, in the sense that, you know, that's what the heavy needs to do, and needs to present that front, right? That this T-28 Proto is like, ah, crap, there's an E5 here. And that really gets your guys in the back free shots. But you don't necessarily want to fix that. So just a couple of defensive pointers. I find that a lot of people play this game reasonably well offensively. You know, they shoot well enough, they do all these things, but I think that what they don't really understand is all the incoming fire lanes and why that's important. And then you see that tree that dropped back there, like that's you're looking for things like that as well, in terms of, okay, are they coming back? Is that grill coming back? Where are they? And see how this 4043 is over here, so you know where he's at. And that's actually good that he's there, because that means that he's not in here. When he's in the ditch, he'll actually still be more potentially dangerous to your team. When he's over here, it's just a matter of time before he gets smoked, either from this side, from RD, or from the places where he's at. He's not going to be able to put a whole lot of pressure on you. You're losing this edge a little bit. They are sort of pushing in through this line, but not really convincingly. So it's not, you still have some time, and that's one of the things that you always want to do when you're looking at your progression on a side. You guys progressed down here pretty easily because their mediums essentially ran away, and they should have, given what they were up against. And so that's good, but you always, whenever I play this game, whenever I'm on one flank or another, it's always a game of timing, and you always want to keep an eye on what's going on that other side, especially in these dead times where you're moving from point to point. And then so the dangerous part of where you're going right now is, as you get higher here, you're really not too worried about this T-28 Proto at this point. You're starting to expose yourself to these guys that might be on these hills back here as you climb here, which is one of the reasons why this ditch is particularly important. And if they don't have artillery down in that ditch, then this guy, in order to get you, right, he has to move out to this north side. Depending on how good their artillery is, they're not really that good at micro positioning. So essentially what this 4043 will end up doing is essentially just hugging this house right here, which basically gives him shots maybe up into in here, and that's pretty much it, which gives you free reign to play through here, which is why that sort of intel is important, like understanding where the artillery is and understanding what his limitations are. It's basically going to allow you free reign to play through a lot of this 3-4 line, where you don't really have to worry about him, unless he's a really good artillery player, because then if it were me and these guys weren't pushing, I would back up to about right here to get that shot over there. But short of that, he's probably not gonna be able to do that. And again, I'd worry less about this guy and more about the grill that's trying to shoot you. I presume it's the grill, it might not be. And then see how your guys left that 4043 over there? That's not so good. And see, especially how this 5100 is coming around this outside. That's not good, because that's going to allow him to get shot by these guys right here. So you have to keep an eye on what's going on in terms of the pressure. And it's sort of what I call when the artillery is under duress. When you gotta make your moves. So you don't really have to worry about that guy. And this is a 704 that you can mostly bully. You need your 30B to do a little bit more spotting here. And again, you guys are too close together, unless, you know, one of you has much better camo view range, like, and he's spotting for you from there. He's probably not going to be able to. I wouldn't worry too much about that north side yet. Again, it's crumbling, but these guys are going to clear through there. What you really want to do is clear out this E line and then deal with that. And then you're starting to get into a position now, as you, like, playing this ditch right here is fine, but as you sort of push up into here, you're actually starting to get into a position where the RD starts becoming relevant from this position. Now, he's probably not the most fantastic artillery player ever, so he's probably more fixated on this side still, but it's something that you have to keep in mind, especially since you know that you're losing the HP battle. And again, I wouldn't worry too much about that. You got to deal with this over here. This is sink or swim over here. No, 30B, don't push him. The artillery's down though, which is fantastic. That's what we call the sim. And then really what you need to do is you need to tell your buddy to get on cap screen, basically. They have mostly slow tanks, and then you can just play this hill. You can play this inside of this hill to stop them. The 5100 could potentially screen as well, or sorry, cap pressure as well. Unfortunately, your 30B friend, not too good. Know your role. Gotta know your role. And the 50B, I'm sorry, the 5100 is putting cap pressure on, and this is what you want. You want them to have to come across into you. Now, you're not really worried about that T-57 heavy. And the reason why I don't like playing this particular position that you're in right now, I'd much rather play this inside over here, because you basically don't have any vision control over the 1-2 line. So a guy could literally just drive up behind you. You wouldn't know until he was there. Right, so I'd prefer to have control over on this side where you can see more of over here. Right, if this E100 drives through the lake, by the time he gets there, it's going to be way too late. That's not really your concern. You just don't want to allow these guys to get around them. And this is why cap and screen is good, because these guys have no choice. Right, they have no choice. You know exactly where they're going to go. You know exactly where they're going to be. There's no ambiguity to what's going on here. And again, though, and this is the problem that I find with a lot of players, and this is something that I'm often critical about in clan wars, is that players don't have any idea what vision control truly means. And that basically means that you have to understand that this is black, that this is entirely black over here. You don't know. Anything can be happening. This grill could be driving up here. You don't know. And if you don't have this guy alive, then there's no longer the pressure on their team to get to you. So when you cap and screen, you always want to have, you don't want to be surprised by the locations of people. Now, whether this grill is brave enough to do that, he was at full health, I believe, whether he's brave enough to do that is another question altogether. But you have to understand where your lanes are and what tanks you're worried about. This E100, even if you didn't shoot this E100 at all, you just let him drive straight forward the whole time, it is unlikely that he would actually be able to spot and shoot the 5100 before the 5100 capped out. The E100 is just not that fast to cross that distance with that spotting range with that gun. So again, the big worry whenever you cap and screen is, how do I protect my capper, right? And this E100 is not the threat. So it's all about prioritization. That was a completely unnecessary shot into the into the turret, but okay. You could have. So the problem with that is that you can't see how this guy's already through. You didn't know. You had no idea, and you have to understand that that's a huge problem, and particularly if they had a little bit more health on their team left, that could create serious issues for you. Luckily, you're in the biggest, baddest tank left on the map, and you still have health, so it doesn't really matter too much. But again, that's when we talk about vision control, especially if I'm critical in clan wars, as I said on one thing, it's that you had no idea where that guy was, and you let him get far too close to your guy. Like, this is the guy that you're supposed to be screening for. You let him get far too close before you discovered he was there, and that's a big problem. But he doesn't. So, and again, his mistake is that he should have just kept running there. Because what you don't want to do is exactly what this guy did, which is to say, you know what, I'm going to take on this E5 frontally in an open plane. Also, you should switch to HE, but that's neither here nor there. Because you can kill him in 2 shots with HE. Oh, luckily he's not even shooting at you. Oh, the bounces are real. Repaired that driver. And then so now they might actually get the captain's well, not the captain's screen, but you need to clean this up so that you can go back and kill the guy with the captain's. At this point, if you kill this guy, I would actually just put you and Aruba on cap. But I imagine, based upon the I already looked at the ending screen, that is not what happens. But that is what should happen. Oh, okay. Well, Aruba's dead. So, all right, now you get my place. Yeah, that was just poor play all around. And hugging this guy's good. You need to be careful though, because depending on where that guy's at, I mean, I don't know if I would take a blind shot from that distance with my teammate that close, but I would. As soon as he died, I would take a shot over in this range. And then it's very easy. You've got enough time. The E5 is a nimble enough tank, and you can climb through basically any of these areas right here to get through to him. You don't really need a whole lot to do it. Ruh-roh. And you don't need to give up your positioning. You don't need to really get any closer to this guy, especially since he appears to be blind. Like, there's no reason for you to close the gap, because you might as well just shoot from this distance. It's not like your shell's going to have problems penning him, but his shell's going to have problems penning you, especially once you get further and further away. Don't forget the AP pen drops off over distance, whereas your heat shells... See that, and this is something that I talk about a lot in the stream, because you have a heat shell loaded right now because you ran out of AP shells, which is fine, no big deal. But see, when a tank goes side profile like this and you have a heat shell loaded, you have to be careful that the shot doesn't stray too low, because when the shot strays low, it can hit that track area, which is considered spaced armor, and it can just eat the shell. So you actually want to, if you see how he's moving left to right now, so you actually, if you need to target in front of him, he doesn't have much speed right now, so you don't really need to target in front of him. But if you want to target in front of him, like let's say he's moving faster, let's say he's moving at like 20-25 kilometers an hour. If he's moving faster, then you actually want to correct just a little bit high, because you don't want the shell to stray too low. Speak of the devil! Yeah, so like basically that shot right there. And that's the problem with heat, and that's why when you switch shells like that, you need to be careful, or when you know that that's what you have loaded, switching from AP or APCR to heat is, you almost need to change the calibration of how you shoot. Now this game just became a lot more interesting. And again, because of the distances, I mean, he's still going to struggle. It's still tier 10 against tier 8. He can't high roll you and kill you. He can get close to killing you, but short of him ammo racking and destroying you, that ain't going to happen. So this is really just a matter of bully. So a lot of times when bully, you just need to make sure that your shot counts, even if you're the one that gets hit. Don't rush it. Oh, you rushed it! You rushed it! So the one way that you could get yourself killed there. So the one way that you lose, the only way that you lose this, right, is if you don't kill him with that shot. He gets a damaging shot and a slight ram based upon your trajectory, right? That's the only way that you lose that. So there's no reason for you to rush that shot, especially when his turret is facing the other way. Go ahead and wait. Let the reticle settle. As he starts to turn his turret towards you, you can time it. When he's almost got that shot, then you can take your shot. You see this happen a lot in late game. I mean, you'll see it in random battles, but you know, there's a lot to learn from this particular replay, in my opinion, from an organized play perspective, from like a clan wars perspective. And like if I was supervising this clan wars game, there would be a lot here that would be like, oh my god, you guys deserve to lose this game, or you guys really just dropped the ball here. And so part of the late game tactics is ensure the victory at all costs. Ensure that you're going, guarantee the win. If you can guarantee the win, guarantee the win. And you don't guarantee wins with snapshots, unnecessary snapshots. You don't guarantee wins with rushed shots if you don't need to. There are situations when you do, like let's say that you were one shot to him. Let's say that that you were worried about him being able to kill you. Okay, you have some license to be a little jumpy. But once you see that turret facing away from you, you got this. Take your time, get the good shot, make sure it's a kill shot. That's all. So you want to avoid panicking. That's essentially what I call it. It's just you're trying to do too much too quickly when you don't need to. And you actually, when you do that, you actually open the door to potential losses where you shouldn't have. And so you got to be careful. And that's just something that we should think about. So we'll talk about what went on here. And so you went south, which again, given the comp, I don't think that's what I would have done, but I don't think that was necessarily bad. You had a platoon mate that was also going south, and so you guys probably made that call in TeamSpeak, and that's fine. I got no problem with that. You guys were reasonably aggressive over here, which is also fine. I don't have a problem with that. You got a little bit slow over here. You don't want to let too many medium tanks and light tanks get too far ahead of you. You have to remember that you're in the E5 on basically what amounts to their weak side, so you want to be the big bad bully there, because there's a lot of tanks that are going to struggle against you. A lot of tier 8 tanks, you know, their medium tanks were running and on the other side of a little mound where they couldn't really get shots at you. So really it was just you against tier 8 tanks and the potential of their artillery hitting a shot into your area, and so that's something to be concerned about. But then once you guys played through this 3-4 line, I thought that was fine. Recognize the cap and screen, and this is the biggest problem that I had. Like, you guys executed the cap and screen okay, but if this was, like I said, if this was Clan Wars, if this was an organized match, I would have just laid into you after the match for basically trying to throw the match. And so again, vision control is really important. Understand, it wasn't like you didn't know the grill was there. It wasn't like you didn't know that the T10 was there. You knew that those tanks were there. You just didn't care, right? And that's a big problem. You were looking to get shots on the E100, and that's fine. Like, you need to try to slow down that E100 as you can. But the whole purpose of the cap and screen is to put cap pressure on, which the 5100 was doing, and he was in good position. He was all the way in the back of the cap. But you got to have that screen. Right, you got to be able to have vision control in that lane, not let guys get down behind you where they can kill your capper. Because if they had a little bit more health or a little bit more presence of mind, that could have been a huge problem. Once they remove that cap pressure, there's no incentive for, you know, that T57 to drive across open field. There's no incentive for that E100 to drive across an open field. There's no incentive for any of their guys to drive across an open field, right? And that changes the dynamic of the game. That changes the game from what should have been a relatively easy win, where it's like, ah, crap, we're either going to lose by cap or I got to drive across and while this E5 just shoots me the whole time, right? And that's the situation that you're trying to create with the cap and screen, which is why I said you should have played this inside lane over here, because you would have had vision control on those guys over there, and you still potentially could have gotten shots on that E100, depending on what your Roomba did and how he decided to play that position. So I felt like that cap and screen was pretty poor. And then afterwards, like, I don't know why the Roomba pushed on that did they have more than one T10? Was it 2 T10s? Or that was the same T10. That he just didn't come up with the grill is what happened. And I don't know. I'm not entirely sure why that Roomba killed himself there. Pressure that T10, get him out, send both tanks to cap, and win, depending on your health and the cap status. But that's not what happened. You ended up having to go and kill that IS-3, which is fine. And then again, just as I said, tactically, you just don't want to rush that if you don't have to. You know, if he's looking the other way, go ahead and aim all the way in. I mean, unless you're going to lose your shot, like unless he's got the ability to get away, to move away, You know, there's no reason for you to rush that shot, because again, the only way that you lose that is if you panic and miss, and you know, he gets a damaging shot, and then either you panic and miss again, or he gets a ram or something like that. Like, that's how you lose those games, and that's a completely embarrassing way to lose, but it's completely avoidable, especially when you get the jump on him like that. So that's one of those things where I just always say, you know, hey man, you just gotta take your time there. You can't there's no need for you to rush that, so don't rush that. And you want people to recognize those situations. One of the things that I always try to emphasize for organized play is understand the situation that you're in. If you're in a one-on-one, you know, go ahead and take your time if you've got it, and if you don't got it, then you know, that's fine. But understand the difference between the two. Alrighty, so if we look at the stats from that game. Un momento. Alright, so if we look at the stats of that game. Also, you should make fun of your 30B platoon mate for dying there, because that was a completely unnecessary death that almost threw the game. And so if that was Miz or Obey, I would have just I would have let them have it. They wouldn't hear the end of it for a while. But you did well. Again, bully, bully, bully. E5, especially in that types of situation, once you get the artillery down, it's just wreck face. And you did a good job of doing that, which is important. So excellent game, well played. Just a few what I would consider mental mistakes, and it's one of those games. Like, this game came down to one shot, basically. It was a very, very close game. Let's put it that way. But it didn't have to be, and that's all that I'm saying. That's one of the takeaways that we should get out of all of this. Like, you know, I was critical of this rushed shot at the end, because I mean, look, his turret is still, you know, 90 degrees, almost 90 degrees away from you. Like, there's no reason to let that shot go without it settling down. But this game ended up being really close. But that wasn't the difference in the game, right? The difference in the game occurs, you know, there's a cascade of choices that occur earlier in the game that culminate in this outcome. And making good choices earlier turns this from a close win to it's a fairly easy win. We kept them out, right? And that's always what you're trying to do. You're trying to make it easier on yourself to win by making those decisions, those good decisions earlier. So just something to think about. Oh man, I forgot that the Firefox is blocking that. No, I can't switch back. Yeah, as I was saying, like, if you look at this, his turret is still like 90 degrees away from you, so like there was plenty of time there. Anyways, though, GG's. I'm glad you won, and you certainly got a lot of damage out of it, so that is good for you too. I agree with Easily. You gotta give me some leeway here to get things working. Well, I had everything working. I just needed, when we did the reboot, I forgot to open up the Firefox windows again. Alright, and so next we'll look at Ron's T54E1 game. That ran a little long, but I feel like we could learn a lot out of that one. I'm sure we'll still be able to find plenty of mistakes for you, Ron. I don't think that there's any game that I play or that anyone plays, but it's not like you can't pick out, oh, okay, I kind of had bad positioning here, bad positioning there. And like a lot of times what I'll point out in these replays is defensive positioning, just because I really feel like people don't put a whole lot of thought into that. Looking at this, no artillery is good, top tier is good, roughly the same comps. You're a little heavier. This is so much harder without my tank cards. Alrighty, so yeah, I typically play through the middle. In an auto-loading tank, especially one that's not like super fast, I'll typically sit behind this building to start, and I'll wait to see what my team does. You can't really get a whole lot of early damage per se from this side without like you see how your RU took this center west scout position, which I'm not really a big fan of from either side. I don't really feel like it's super productive from either way. I really feel like you get a lot more done on doing the center east scout, because it you know, from the south it exposes these guys that are crossing through here, from the north it exposes these guys that are crossing through here, and you can potentially get shot. So if the RU-251 was over on this side, then you could shade over to the east to potentially get set up for shots. But seeing as how he's over here, it doesn't really matter, because whatever he spots, nobody on your team is going to be able to shoot. So it doesn't really matter. And then so one of the things, and this is just sort of a strategic map positional thing, is that you want to be careful about playing this area right here. Okay, now there's no artillery, right? So you don't have to worry about that. So that means you can play pretty much anywhere back here. But the interesting thing about coming up right here is that once you get up into this area right here, you're sort of committed, and anybody can shoot at you from this sort of wide angle from either side. So you got to be careful playing through there. And this is one of those things where, so whenever you're playing a second line tank, and you're basically positionally playing this as a second line tank right now, you kind of want to see where you're actually going to get spots. It's kind of like when I play artillery. When I play artillery, like let's say I always play east on artillery here, but let's say I was playing artillery on this map. What I would do is I would look and see how our team is dispersed. Like I would see this conqueror would be over here, and I'm like, okay, well he might spot something in that area. I see these guys pushing up over here, but they're pretty far back, so they're probably not going to light anything over here. So I'm not aimed in like right over here right now, because I'm not going to get any spots there. Similarly, I know this T-20 is here. I know that they already have somebody lit over here, so I know that this guy might light that guy again, so I might be aimed in over here. And so when you're playing a second line tank, it's sort of the same thing. You want to kind of figure out, where am I actually going to get spots? You know, obviously if you spot something, and then it's right in front of you and you're going to be able to shoot it. But like if this conqueror spots something, where is it going to be, right? It's going to be down over there. And so you want to already be thinking about positionally, how am I going to move to get shots if that conqueror actually lights something? You gotta be careful. You're still a little bit far back, which is fine. That's not, again, this is more of a second line tank. You're just looking to be opportunistic at this point. So it looks like they've got a bunch of their guys on that other side. Oh, you can get that bat chat. Oh, you can get him. Look, he's... So this is one of those things where, again, this is actually a pretty easy get for you, just because of a couple of things. One, he's shooting at this super Pershing. You always got to watch your guys moving forward, like when they sort of expose themselves. In a second line tank, you always want to be ready. You always want to be ready if somebody actually, you know, presses the W key, where all you have to do to shoot this bat chat is literally just drive forward to right here. Right, and you can start clipping it out, and that has a dual effect. One, it can hopefully prevent him from clipping at your super Pershing, who's actually got a pretty good angle, so you're not like super worried about the super Pershing actually dying right now. But so you can potentially push him back. If he insists on continuing to shoot the super Pershing, then you can just clip him out, right? And so you as a second line tank, like this is exactly what you're looking for in terms of movement from your front line tank, and then it's just about how you react. Do you react accordingly and fast enough? Like there's so that's fine. So that window closed quickly though. So yeah, and you don't want to see how you're basically up in that position where the super patient just got shot. Like that's so when if you're transitioning from a second line role to a first line role, then that's fine. You can play that. But if you're still playing a second line role, you're actually still a little bit too far up, especially given how far back these guys are at, because that means that down here can potentially get shots into where you're at. So like this is not really a super worthwhile trade for you, even though that's not going to be a super great firing lane for him. Like just positionally, this is not really where you want to be. And you guys are still camping on this side, which isn't super helpful. And then you're sort of going lower here, which is actually becomes worse because you don't really have good position here. So if they get through here, you're not really going to know. And this is sort of when we go back to talking about vision gaps. Like nobody really knows what's happening over in this area here. And when I look at the minimap, I sort of try to get a feel for that. Like where do we actually have dark lanes, right? Right now, this one line is a completely dark lane because that T20 died, right? So you've got reasonable vision control over the middle. There's another dark lane, a short one right here, but that can potentially be dangerous as you move down here, right? That can potentially be a problem because let's say you guys spot each other at the same time. You guys can shoot each other, but you've got a bunch of teammates over here that will just basically be watching. And that's sort of the problem. And so when you're playing a second line tank, right, you want to positionally be someplace where you're not the first spotter. Like again, it's different if you're transitioning to play a front tank role, which may need to happen at some point in this game. But if not, then you don't need to be positionally quite where you're at. You're sort of overexposing yourself for minimal value. And so pushing here. So this is what I call transitioning into a frontline role. And so this is dangerous for a number of reasons. It's primarily dangerous because the position that you're going to is really vulnerable to getting shot from down here. You do have some guys pushing over here, which is good. We don't know where anything is. They might all be camping for all we know. The problem is that even if they're all camping, back here, you can't really push this bat chat because he's just going to you're going to proxy him, he's going to proxy you. But that really doesn't hurt him too much because there's not a whole lot of your team that's going to be shooting him. At least not yet. So you need to be very careful. Like all you really want to do at this point is, like a lot of times it's, you know, we talk about this deductive logic when you're a scout, right? So on Prokhorovka, when I scout through the middle at the start of the game, I use deductive logic, right? I can scout pretty much anything that goes east on standard Prokhorovka, right? So I know anything, almost anything that drives over the track. And so deductive logic says any tanks that I didn't see probably didn't go over the tracks, or, you know, have better camo rating, or, you know, or went, you know, all the way back in the red line where I can't quite get them, right? And so it's the same thing applies here. You still haven't seen most of their tanks. You still haven't seen most of their tank destroyers. You still haven't seen most of their guys, right? You know that they've got a bunch of low tiers over here, but that's not really too big of a concern. Really what you want to know is like, you know, where's that JP2? Where's that JT? Where's this? Oh, I guess the Scorpion's over there, but you get what I'm getting at. So if these guys are all back here and you push this bat chat, that's not going to end well for you. But your guys are pushing through the town, and one way that you beat a camp is basically by spot and bomb, right? You get map control, you get into this position right here on this bat chat, where you're just on the other side of this hill, and then you let these guys come around through here where they can get into a position to shoot the bat chat. Pushing this guy is not necessarily a good option. See how they're already getting shot? The bat chat obliged you by moving out, and everyone else obliged you by missing. But it's especially, you know, there's no artillery, but especially if there was artillery, you want to be a little bit safer. You want to be back in here. So you got away with it, which is good, but you got to be careful. And that was probably worth it in order to get him down, but I still feel that was unnecessary. He could have gotten shot from over there. So just something to keep in mind. You got to be a little bit careful. And there is a slight lane where they can shoot you from over here, but it's not very big. You just don't want to move forward from this position. And so playing the center lane, when you have, so basically this is shifted to an east-west map control thing. They haven't really, they've got too many guys in their base, so they got too many guys camping. And that's good for you, because then it's just spot and bomb. And that's where this sort of middle road becomes important in this sort of mid to late game. This would be more of a mid game scenario, but they've got control over here, so you want to have control of most of this area over here, because that's still going to allow you to get shots through here, but it's going to reasonably protect you once they get into that area there. And I wouldn't worry too much about the CDC. What you're actually concerned about are these guys back here, and you'll be able to, well, unless the CDC just drives into you, which gets more power to you. You don't want to drive out there, because there's again, he's spotting you just as much as you're spotting them. But you can, now that you guys have map control down here, now is when you can actually start coming out on this the east side of this house and getting shots on where that JT-88 is at. And basically use this house to protect you from those guys that are still camping on that other side. And this is basically the spot and bomb, except now instead of you spotting, you need to get set up to do the bombing. And so again, there's no reason for you to go around this side of the house. I wouldn't worry too much about that. Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. Oh, especially since he's tracked there. Get him! Yeah, these guys camp pretty hard. And then now, you just want to basically control through this middle, get this ISO down. The CDC's ISO where he's at. So you just want to shift over. And then you want to shift over in a manner that's defensively solid. You don't want to get shot from these guys over here. So like where this 4202 is fine. Luckily the Conqueror gone down. And then again, you're still playing a little bit too far forward here. You want to play a little bit more on the road, because that's going to allow you to spot and bomb on these guys a little bit easier. Again, you're not the one doing the spotting at this point, so you want to close that distance gap. So you actually want to be closer up to like where this Conqueror is right now. Maybe just on the other side of the road from him, against this building right here. So that's going to allow you more better shots. You've benefited strongly from the fact that this team is full camp. And then it's the same thing. It's still an east-west game. You have guys coming through here. You need to get into this area where these guys are at, though. You're not really going to get shots. As these guys push down over here, you'll get shots into that area, but you don't need to worry about that. Right now, you're worried about overwatch on these guys right here. And then you're pushing out a little bit too far here. Like, this is not totally necessary. When we talk about being defensively sound, this is not defensively sound. You can get away with so much. And again, you know, a lot of times you want, so when we talk about micro positioning, the micro positioning is really important. Did you go further than you needed to go to get the shot? Did you go not far enough to be ready to get a shot, right? And it's always one of those two. Either you didn't go far enough, and then when the guy gets lit, you're like, oh, I gotta drive forward some more, right? It's a waste of time. It's a waste of opportunity. Or you drive too far, and you're like, wow, I really didn't need to drive that far to shoot that guy. And either of those is inefficient, and so you want to cut both of those out. So your micro positioning here has a lot to be desired. As a general rule of thumb, you want to stick a little bit closer to this road here. It's not like you really get very many shots by moving forward like you did that you can't get from a little bit further back and from more safety. because you could potentially get home there. There's sort of a building that's in between you, and so this is one of those things where you got to decide what you want to do. Like this GP2 is pretty much frozen there. These guys are basically sniping back there. When you look at the configuration of your guys, this is what I talk about a lot in this stream in terms of understand what your priorities need to be. If you're not really afraid of these guys pushing you, if you're not really afraid of these guys being a problem for you, just leave them there. Just go deal with the rest of their team, and they'll still be there when you come back. And so you want to clean that up, and then you can worry about those guys. And then you want to be a little bit careful where you're at. You don't really have super great so one of the things is that you can still get shot from back there. So you actually want to, a lot of times, and this is the sort of advantage of buildings, you want to be close to buildings just because it's going to cut down on angles for people. Like see where this Conqueror is at. This Conqueror is actually in a reasonably good position because they don't have any arty, and there's no firing lane other than these guys to where he's at. So even though he spots them, they spot him, it's not going to be super easy for them to just deal damage to him. So that micro positioning ends up being pretty important. And again, it's just spot and bomb at this point. And your Scorpion is on cap, which is the thing. It's fine. Again, it forces your opponent to do something, which is ideally what you want. You can hit him side dirt. It's so almost loaded.
Enemy vehicle destroyed.
And then see how these guys, they're still hanging out on that side. And you got lit by that Centurion, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. Oh, except there's a SC-122-44. Oh, look at that! He tracked you out. Take your time. Take your time. So especially with that final shot in the clip, you know he's reloading. Take your time. We don't want that to, like, if this was a closer game, right? You need to understand that he's reloading, and you've got one shot. You've got one shot to kill him. So go ahead and take your time. Make sure that shot counts. If the RNG still screws you, then it does. But don't make it harder on yourself than it needs to be. And then this is essentially a couple of things. One, it's a camerathon, but more importantly, it's a layered defense. Like you only have to deal with parts of their team at any one given time, and that's always going to be a problem for them. Alrighty. Test. Oh yeah, okay, we're back. Alright, thanks for the donation, Soup, first of all. What was the last thing that I said? What was the last thing that you heard? It's not actually the mic, it's the, for some reason, when I switch between windows, or when I load the client, something happens, and it just doesn't transmit. Alrighty, so, I guess what I was saying, so, I have to say the whole thing again. So, positionally, I think was the big deal. You don't want to drive further than you have to in order to get shots. You want to pre-plan for your shots, and you don't. As far as like when that bat chat was concerned, what I was saying was that if that bat chat was already one shot when you got there, then it's worth the risk to go, you know, and maybe take a hit or 2 or 3 in order to kill him. But when he's full health there, you have your guys flanking around the side. Once you get a sense that the other team is camping, you need to sort of switch into a spot and bomb mode, because that's the most effective way to break a camp. And that means really just sitting on the other side of the house from the bat chat, sort of shelter yourself from fire from the west, and allow your guys to just get shots on the bat chat and force that bat chat to move out. Otherwise, it's just, you know, make sure that you're positionally sound defensively. Don't drive into too many lanes if you don't, too many opposing enemy lanes of fire if you don't have to. Stay a little bit closer to buildings when you can, because that's going to give you better cover in most cases, and don't rush your shots. Basically what I was saying was that, like on that SU-122-44 at the end there, let's say that he wasn't one shot, let's say that he was 2 shot. He did get his shot which tracked you. Okay, you need to rush your shots a little bit. You might not be able to do 2 fully aimed shots before he reloads, but that wasn't the case. He was 1 shot. You had plenty of time to aim fully with the last shell in your clip. The last thing that you need is for RNG to screw you and for that shell to go off, and you're like, okay, he's not dead. Now I'm on my 30-second reload and he's going to kill me. All right, so again, it's the same thing with critical. If you don't have to rush your shot, then don't feel, you don't want to feel more pressure than there really is in any given situation. So just make sure that you sort of feel that out. All right, so if we look at the stats, you did pretty well, which is good. Their team did pretty poorly, which is pretty much hallmark of a camping team. As I was saying, I mean, you did a good job. I mean, you did what you needed to do to win the game. You did well playing from that middle area. So that's the good news. The bad news is the micro positioning, but also the fact that their team was camping really helped you out, because they basically presented a layered defense where you only had to deal with small parts of their team at any one given time. And this is the result of teams that play like that play this sort of non-overlapping campy defense, is that they just don't deal enough damage because they're never really in that advantageous of a position to deal a lot of damage. There's no overlap in their coverage. They're not protecting the bat chat. They're not protecting, you know, whatever, the JT88. There's no actual overlap in their defense, and that actually makes it a lot easier for teams to pick them apart. And that's why I always, you know, what the takeaway from this should be that when you see situations like that, you should immediately switch to a spot and bomb mode mentality, as opposed to, okay, let's control a specific area and play out of it. It becomes, how much of the map are they going to give us for free, and then how do we just spot them from one side and shoot them from another? And that's almost always the best way to break those types of camps. Which is essentially what your guys ended up doing, purposefully or not. It's important to note. But you did well, so good job, Ron. I am proud of you. It's certainly better than the last Fishing Bay replay that we watched. So GG, well played. I'm glad you won.